I was sitting in my house. I was like online or listening to podcasts and reading books, but I felt like I was by myself. And I felt like if I was surrounded by people who cared about the same things I did and were actively working on the same path, then think about how much our collaborative conversations could help each other grow.
Welcome to the Going Long Podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. And yes, I am Billy Keels. I'm your host, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you back to yet another amazing conversation. I know you're going to get so much out of today's, especially if you like understanding how to build a community, how to be a part of a community. Maybe you felt uncomfortable and you didn't really know where to find people that are thinking about the same thing as you were. Well, guess what? Today's guest has done that. It comes from a background in the military, but decided that wanted to not just be there, was also looking to leverage active income to invest in passive income. I love that strategy. It's one that I used for a long time, and I know you're going to get a lot out of today's conversation. But with that said, listen, just really quickly, we continue to move up the charts, and I really, really appreciate that because you continue to listen, you continue to watch, you continue to download the episodes, you're talking to having conversations with your family, with your friends, and it's absolutely amazing. And the most important part is that you continue to take action, you continue to get to the goals, the outcomes that you've set for your life, and just feel very fortunate that you're a part of that we are a part of that for you. At the same time, one of the main reasons that we continue to move up this charts together is because you're leaving your honest written reviews as well as ratings. So if you've not had a chance to do that, or you've been thinking, hey, I want to do this, or you're just listening for the second time and you're like, wow, this is really amazing. I really like this. Or, hey, listen, I know what you would be even better if you could do this. Share it. Just share it. Share a written review, honest written review, as well as a rating. We have a nice little video if you don't know how to do that on the Apple Podcast platform, and we would really, really appreciate that. Also, if you want to find really, really episodes that were far away, we've done over 200 episodes at this point in time, and maybe they're not on your favorite podcast platform, say that fast 3 times, what you can do is go to billykeels.com. When you get there, the screen's going to change really quickly, but then you're going to see this tab that says podcast. Click on that podcast and you will find every single podcast we've ever done. Video version, audio version, awesome. Show notes, all that kind of stuff. Just check it out there. billykeels.com. Let the screen change. Go to the podcast tab and you'll find it there. And then lastly, this thing with the Accredited Investor Club, it's really, really cool, everybody. If you haven't done it, you should really be sending me an email. Send the email to aiclub@billykeels.com. If you're an accredited investor, you want to connect with other accredited investors, you are tired of getting crushed by taxes and all of this kind of things that sometimes aren't cool because you're doing 100% of the work and you're bringing home 50% of the reward. If you want to connect with other people that are actually taking action to do something about that, I would highly recommend you send an email, aiclub@billykeels.com. We'll get connected, talk to you more about these cool other accredited investors that are there and how you can benefit by connecting with other accredited investors. You're going to get access to some really amazing opportunities that can help you do the things that you want to do and get the outcomes that you're looking for in your life. So with that, I talked to you about before, today's conversation is really, really awesome. You're going to enjoy it. Today's guest started out in the military, by default, was a long distance investor, literally from the West Coast to the East Coast, was listening to some advice by family members, decided to take action, was an accidental landlord, and now has built up an amazing portfolio in a very short amount of time using a very specific niche secret strategy that you'll want to listen to so that you can do something very similar, if not the same, once you speak to your teams about it. I'll just kind of leave it there. But you're going to enjoy today's conversation with Shelby Osborne, and we'll get to that just after this. Are you looking for a way to get to long-distance investing success, but not spending all the effort? You want to do it in a way that's much faster and it doesn't cause as much pain? Well, listen, I can save you all of that stress. Just go to billykeels.com/7 mistakes and you can pick up your free PDF to help you on your road to long-distance investing success. So if you want to know how you can be ready to build your own long-distance investing community based on these 5 simple pillars, then guess what? Today's the conversation that you're going to want to listen to until the very last word, seriously, the very last word, I promise, because today's guest not only began her career started one place, and also has retired from the military. She then went into, transition into the sales arena. And of course, that is music to our ears here on the Go Along podcast, because we have so many people that are in the sales profession. And also since then, she's focused on real estate and helping military members as well as investors find the right asset for them. She's also the founder and CEO of 5 Pillars Realty Group. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation, Shelby Osborne. Shelby, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, this is, I'm looking forward to everybody in the Go Along family learning so much from you, getting to know more about your story and knowing about the many people that's lives that you've already impacted. I don't want to tell the whole thing, so I'll just kind of be quiet and then let you tell your own story. But the thing is, as you know, Shelby, you're going to get 5 questions for sure. You're going to get 2 in the beginning. You're going to get 3 in the end. You're probably going to get a lot of questions in the middle. The thing is, I don't know what those questions are yet, because it's really going to depend on what you answer. So just kind of curious.
Bring it on.
I figured this. Yeah. Why did I know you were going to say something like that? All right, cool. So here's the thing. You're ready for us to get started? I'm not even going to ask you because you already said bring it on. So the very first thing that the Going Along family wants to know, Shelby, is could you help us understand, where do you live in the United States?
Yes, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Wow. I think is that the Queen City?
It sure is. Yeah.
Wow. Cool. Something like that. Well, see, we go learning all kinds of stuff. It's a very, very awesome town. Lots of things happening in that city about now. So appreciate you sharing that. And then also, what is the most positive thing that has happened to you today? Over the last 24 hours, not today. Over the last 24 hours, like what's the most positive thing that's happened to you?
Well, it also happened today. So it works both ways.
All right, cool.
I have been posting on Facebook and Instagram some thoughts that I've just been having and reflecting on and sharing them with the world. And I had a message this morning because I have my post set to just my friends. And I had a message from a woman who asked me to make it public so that way she could share it with her kids. And she said that she really liked my message. So I was like, that's freaking cool. There's a mom out there who wants her daughters to read what I've been posting. And it made me feel lots of things. So cool.
That is very awesome. So, and it's great because you're like impacting lives of people that you didn't have a direct access to. So like power through influence and positive impacting. And thank you so much for sharing that, because that is really, really awesome. The world needs much more positivity, positive stories like that. And it's great that you continue to go out and post on your Facebook and on your Instagram. And I'm sure you're going to tell us more about how people can find out about that and get uplifted and all that positivity and stuff like that. But here's the thing, Shelby, I kind of need to ask you for a favor. I asked you for one earlier, but nobody knows that. But now they do know that. And so I need you to kind of help me, because the thing is, Shelby, I try to tell your story literally in like a second and a half. That's not possible, right? Because you've done way too many things. You've impacted too many lives. But I try, because I like to kind of set the bar high and see if I can give myself a challenge. Never going to happen. You've done too many things. So I need your help. If you can actually tell us your backstory in your own words. And at the same time, Shelby, if you could think about some of the major decisions that you've made to get to this point in your journey. And then from there, we'll see where you and I take the conversation. How's that sound?
Sounds great. I can handle it.
All right, cool. Over to you.
Okay. Perfect. So my story with real estate actually starts a couple years before that, when real estate wasn't even a thought in my mind. I was active duty in the military for 6 years. And after being in the military, I became increasingly frustrated with some of the restrictions and things that have always been done a certain way. And I started looking ahead to my future, as I feel like possibly a lot of people do when they're in, a W-2 job or in a job that doesn't necessarily fulfill their needs. They start looking ahead and thinking about, is this what I want to do with the rest of my life for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? And I learned so much from the military, but I also realized that it wasn't what I wanted to do long term. So I decided in the middle of 2017 that I wanted to get out to pursue real estate full time as an investor. So I decided to get out, and I needed a way to generate active income to fuel my passive income goals. And I decided to get my real estate license because I figured those were kind of nested in the same direction. And I got out in 2018 and pursued both of those avenues full steam ahead. And over the next couple of years, I've built up the 5 Pillars team at eXp Realty. And I have a portfolio of 74 rental properties and have built the Pints and Properties Real Estate Investors Meetup, which is now nationwide, as a way to give back and provide value to people who are considering jumping into real estate as well.
Wow. That's a lot. That's a whole lot. I mean, wow. So from the starting the group, and that is a meetup group, and you're doing that, I guess, virtually, so that if it's nationwide, so that's kind of cool. It's probably even worldwide, I'm going to assume, or it will be pretty soon.
They are actually in-person meetups.
Cool.
The way that it's set up actually is, so I had my own local meetup that I created and was running, and then other people in other cities, because we're kind of loud on social media, we're like, hey, that's a cool concept. I'd like to do something similar in my market. And so I created a system in which they could start up their own meetup and then run their own show. And we highlight them on our website and on our social media platform to spread the word.
That's really, really awesome. Amplification. Yes, we like that. So there's a couple of things that you mentioned before, right? So from the fact you started out with your real estate, but it was 6 years active duty. And yes, to your point, you mentioned, just like a lot of people, because there are a lot of people that are listening here, running on treadmills, cooking dinner and all other kind of stuff, that are in, high paid professions, and they're, doing these things, and they realize a couple of years in, like, hey, listen, this may not be the thing. But you're very kind, because you said yours was like 5 or 10 or 15 years. But many people think about this, what we're going to do for the next 40 years, and they keep doing it for quite a while, and you realize that it wasn't your thing. But you mentioned 2 things, active income to passive income. I really want to come back to that, because I think that's really important, just how you think that through, or how you thought that through. But even before then, like, you were in the military, you were active in the military, and then you said in 2017, you decided to go full-time in real estate, but you didn't really tell us why you even thought about getting into real estate. Because one of the things I think is just always amazing is, how do people even start on this path? Because I think a lot of people think that it has to be this really predefined path and stuff like that. And so I'm interested and curious about what it was that even attracted you to this type of an asset.
For sure. So a lot of things started happening at the same time. My frustrations with the military were increasing as I had moved from my first duty station, which was in Washington State. And I had bought a house as a second lieutenant, brand new in the Army. And when I moved duty stations, because that's what happens in the military, they move you. And I was now in Fayetteville, North Carolina, in Fort Bragg. I was starting to pay attention to that house that I decided to keep. I decided not to sell it. I was going to keep it and put a tenant in there. And as I was getting more frustrated with my job, I was looking at other options to make money. And I realized that property that I had bought with my VA loan, which was 0% down for the military service members, was actually cash flowing. After I had not run numbers, I did not buy it as an investment property. But with a tenant in place after property management and my fees, I was still making $150 a month. So not much, but I was like, hey, if I did that, a couple more times, maybe that income could pay for my life. And also I was given a copy of Robert Kiyosaki's, not Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It was actually The Business of the 21st Century, which most people have Rich Dad, Poor Dad as their light bulb book.
That's the gateway. It's the gateway,
exactly. But within this Robert Kiyosaki book, he had the cash flow quadrant drawn out, where he talks about the employee, self-employed, business owner, and investor. And I was looking at that breakdown, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm an employee. I want to invest. So it seemed like all of the stars were aligning. And then once I stumbled upon Bigger Pockets, it was game over. Those 3 things kind of really led me down the path of real estate.
Cool. So you had the frustration that was going on with your job. You had so you were in Washington State and you went back to the East Coast. Is that right?
Correct. So, my first duty station was in Washington, and then they move you. So I moved back to North Carolina.
Okay. So you moved back to North Carolina, but you had the option to sell your property. Why did you not sell your property? Why did you keep it?
So I kept it mostly because I had my dad bringing in my head. Okay. And he's like, hey, just hold it, put a tenant in there, because then someone else is paying down your mortgage and not you. And I was like, you know what, Dad, that's that's pretty smart. So we'll do that. And then also values were increasing so rapidly in Washington. It just made sense to hold on to something I bought for 158 that's now worth like 360 because real estate's crazy like that.
Yeah. Yep. Depending on the location. Yep. Absolutely. So that's really, and I'm glad that you said that, right? Because sometimes I think people, you have this thought that like there's this master plan or you're doing this, you're doing that, but you were just open to listening to something that your dad said. And you're like, okay, well, listen, this is increasing in value. Somebody else is paying the rent. And I'm making $150, probably the same amount of money that you put, which was very little to nothing down because it was a VA loan, as you mentioned before. Like you can't get that. You couldn't get that in the bank. So it's either get 3 cents from a bank after 6 months or $150 a door. You do that a couple of times and it's kind of like, all right, well, this is starting to make sense. And then so those were the first two things. And then the third thing was you saw Rich Dad, Poor Dad or not Rich Dad, Poor Dad, sorry, 21st Century. You got into the Kiyosaki world, started to open your mind, and you decided that it was time to continue to take more action. Yes. Oh, hey, by the way, everybody,
sure.
if you couldn't just see that, if you're not watching the video version, like Shelby did this kind of like, wow, movement. So you need to go check out the video version. I know that I do this all the time, but yeah, she just did this like kind of cool dance. So that's really interesting. And I'm glad you shared that because it is just a matter of doing it. So you were a long distance investor also too, before it was like cool and fashionable and all that stuff. So fellow trendsetter, which is awesome. But then you also said something else that I think is really interesting, or actually even before we get into that active and passive, like a lot of people would have been afraid to do what you did. Like, and you and we were mentioning this earlier before, like I live in Barcelona, Spain, and I've only purchased assets that were thousands of kilometers away, right? I don't know what it's like to purchase down the street. And you did the very first kind of the asset that you purchased, and then you were like literally on the other side of the left coast to East Coast in the US. Totally. Like fears that you had, things that you were going through, like, because that's not normal. That's definitely contrarian to what most people would even do, think, and then let alone act upon.
For sure. And so I was fortunate that I had a good relationship with a property manager there that I had built. So my dad's old army buddy retired to the army and stayed in Washington and had good relationships in that area in regards to property managers. And I was new at that time. So I really lucked out because I did not even know what I should be asking. And that's what you said earlier. It wasn't some master plan. I hadn't done all this research. I just kind of stumbled into it and found a property manager who I did trust and has been fantastic the entire time that I still own that property, even more so than my managers in North Carolina, which is interesting. But yeah, it is a little bit of a leap of faith, especially in the beginning, but there were things that I could have done, which is, get online and Google, what to ask property managers when you're interviewing them, like basic things, get on BiggerPockets in the forums and be like, hey, I'm investing across the country. What should I do? But I just, in this case, stumbled into a situation that ended up working out.
Well, and once again, many times it's not a master plan. So a lot of the Going Long family that is watching, listening, already have, like, they were much clearer than you and I when we got started. Like I got started and I knew that I had money in the bank and I wanted to buy a property. There was no more thought than that. And I made a very simple decision. It was, hey, listen, my family lives near this area. So if everything goes wrong, at least I can pick up the phone and say, hey, listen, can you guys go fix the property or do something like that? There wasn't a lot of thought. And so, and I love hearing you tell that part of the story, because I think there's so many people that talk about, well, I had this master plan and this strategy and then it took us da-da-da. But many times just to get started, you don't need that. So, yeah, it's
and you learn best through experience. At least I do, for sure. Yes. I can be told things and I can read things online till I'm freaking blue in the face, but it's not until I am living it and experiencing it, then that is where the true wisdom is felt and absorbed. And then that's where you implement that on the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. Rinse and repeat. So Shelby, you mentioned earlier, appreciate you coming back to that point. You gave great insight, at least the question. I'd love for you to expand a little bit more, because you mentioned that as you were in the military, you decided to go full-time in 2017, but you also then decided that you needed, I don't know if you said if you needed or you wanted, to me in my mind, they're a little bit different, but you were looking for active income so that you could go fill your passive income. Break that down for us. Talk to people. Help us understand what you mean by that.
Yeah, sure. So that, as we've already talked about the one in Washington where I put 0% down and got that first door, if you would. But it was the end of 2017 where I was still in the Army. I didn't get out until 2018, where I bought my first intentional investment property. And this was a 25% down, just conventional investment purchase. And I closed on that property, which was only a $75,000 duplex. And I signed away enough money for me to quickly realize that I could not do this again and again and again, or all of my savings would be gone unless I had a way to replenish my reserves and just my income in general to continue doing so. So that's when it really hit me that I needed a way to make money to invest again and again. However, that actually changed over time too, because as you go and live and experience, you gain, wisdom and insight, right? So I put that 25% down on that first intentional investment property. And then I discovered the BRRRR strategy. So I realized that of course, I wanted to be making as much money as I could in sales to help with all of the extras that go along with investing in real estate. But the BRRRR strategy, the buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, so you could recycle funds, was a way that I was able to scale so quickly because I had that one chunk of change and was able to recycle it on multiple properties.
So every once in a while, so you're able to recycle, right? And this is the important part. So you just broke down the BRRRR strategy. I know people mention it a lot of times, but maybe there's someone that's listening for the very first time and they're like, hang on a second, what do you mean you recycled money? What are you talking about? I don't understand this. And this sounds really cool. I'm a high paid professional, and it sounded like you were figuring out that you had to start to replenish the coffers for more cash. But break down what the BRRRR strategy is and how it helps you get to a specific outcome.
Absolutely. So the BRRRR strategy is when you buy a property that is generally either under market value or distressed, generally distressed in my situation.
What is distressed? So just so
cheap.
People understand.
So this means that it's generally not move-in ready. Maybe it's incredibly dated. Maybe it needs a new roof and HVAC system. All of these potential, lots of potential for this property to increase in value. So you're buying it in this state. And then the next phase is that you're going to renovate it. You're going to do everything that you need to do to the property to get it back up to as high as you can in market value, rent ready, a property that you and your family want to move into. So that's the buy and then the rehab. And then the next one is you're going to rent it. Now that it's in this great condition, you can find a tenant to rent the property at top of the market, ideally. And then after that, it's renovated, it's got a tenant in place. You can go to a lender and say, hey, I have this property with this value and a tenant in place. Can I refinance it? Or if you bought it cash, just finance in the first place to pull out the value that you've put into it. Ideally, the cost to purchase it and the cost to renovate it, you're able to recoup those funds by refinancing it. And now that you've pulled out that money, you can go do it again.
Which sounds awesome. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people that are thinking to themselves, well, this sounds really simple. But there's one thing that you just said, Shelby, that I'm trying to figure out what that means. So you've just gone through and you're renting it. And between renting and then the possibility of refinancing and pulling, basically what you're doing is you're pulling the invested capital or as much of the invested capital out so that you can use it again.
Correct.
But between the time that you rent it and the time you can refinance it, is that something that can happen the very next day? Is that something you need to wait 6 months for, a year? Talk to us a little bit about what that period of time is.
That all depends on how you acquire the property and the lender that you're using for the refinance. Most of the time, when you call a bank or a lender, they're going to say that you need to season that property for 6 months, generally. So that way you can show that the tenant is producing the income and that the property has been held by you by 6 months. But the way that I expedited this process was by using delayed financing. So if you use delayed financing, you are acquiring the property in either cash or a form of cash. So like line of credit, anything without a lien against the property. And in that case, there is no seasoning period. And you can, because you're not refinancing, you are delaying the financing and you can do it much faster than traditional means. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. To me, it does. No, yeah. To me, it does. I'm just thinking. Okay. Well. Let me think about
Take it apart.
No. Yeah. So just thinking about what the Going Along family is thinking about today. So, but the thing I want everyone to understand about what you've just said is, well, the question I have for you is, did you know how to do that the very first day that you bought that property in North Carolina? After your very first intentional purchase, where you put the 25% down? Did you know this strategy already?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So this is the thing. So every Going Along family member that is listening and or watching, right, is learning something new. This is a new tool that anyone who's looking for the outcome of their life, which is to become financially free or have the freedom to choose to do what they want to do, when they want to do, with whom they want to do. Shelby, you are sharing a new tool with them. So, but there are a couple words that you use that I want to make sure everybody understands. When you talked about seasoning, that is just the amount of time that a lender says that you need to show a particular, it could be seasoned 6 months, like you said before, that you need to be able to show 6 months worth of records, or it may be a 1-year seasoning period, just so that, the idea there, Shelby, is so that you can verify, or the banks can verify, or whoever your lender is, that what you say is the case is actually is the case. If the income is the income or the expenses are the expenses. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Wow. Don't you just love this conversation? This is amazing. This is fantastic. And so just really quickly, I just wanted to remind you, for those of you that are looking to create more options for yourself, get there faster, and do that with long distance investing, make sure that you go to billykeels.com/7 mistakes to avoid, so that you can avoid all those mistakes, get to your goals faster and sooner. Once again, that's billykeels.com/7 mistakes to avoid. Now back to the conversation. So you talked about seasoning, and then I think you used another term that maybe someone may not understand when you talked about you talked about the HELOC, right? So you said this is something where there's not a lien on the property. And I would, maybe if you could break that down, because this is really where I think everybody wants to really know the secret sauce.
Okay. So in order to waive that seasoning period for the delayed financing process, that first time when you acquire the property, when you do the buy on the BRRRR strategy, if you buy it without a lender, essentially. So like a formal lender, because when you buy a home with a formal lender, they're going to put a lien against the property, saying that if you default, then they have every right to take back this property in full. Like really, they're the owner. And if I'm butchering this, you can absolutely, step in.
No, you're doing fine.
The way to do the delayed financing is that you don't get a lien. You don't finance it traditionally upfront. So if you buy a property with cash or a form of cash, so that can be a line of credit, a HELOC, even private money. If that private money lender doesn't put a lien against the property, then that's when you can circumvent the traditional seasoning period, and you can finance as quickly as possible.
Awesome. So listen. So there's a couple things going along, family, and it's like every other thing. Number one, Shelby is explaining a concept. She is not giving anybody advice. This is why it's super important for everyone to have your own team, right? She is sharing her experience. She is sharing concepts. So once again, not giving you any advice, she's sharing a concept. Make sure that you talk this through with your team to see how you can apply it to your specific situation, number one. The second thing is, this is also why it really does. I was talking to a good friend of mine who's a listener all the time. We were talking about different types of loans, right? We're talking about recourse loan, non-recourse loan. And so this is one of the things that you need to understand, and you need to also understand, when you have a lien, if they can come take their property, or they can come and get you to actually have to pay them in some form of compensation, right? So these are different types of things, but more than anything else, so happy, Shelby, that you're sharing this concept with us, a way that you can accelerate the way to gain more assets. And it's important that each one of you in the Going Along family, that you talk to this concept with your team to see how you can apply it to your specific situation. So thank you for that, Shelby. And I want to pivot just a little bit, because one of the things that we started talking about is, aside from you starting out as a long distance investor, once you decided that you wanted to kind of move into this real asset, you decided that you wanted to get active income to create passive income, which is a concept that I think a lot of us, if we really held on to that and we maximized our earned income to be able to leverage passive investments through passive income, it would be just, wow, unbelievable. But with that as a backdrop, you also mentioned that one of the things that you're really passionate about is being able to build community. You talked about the meetup. Talk to us about how that focus maybe also, I always want to know, just maybe explain to us, like, why did you even go down that path as well? I think it's important to understand that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Community is like probably my biggest thing in so many different aspects. But when I created Pints and Properties, the real estate investors meetup, it was back in 2018 in August. And I was like, I cannot be the only one who cares about this stuff. I was sitting in my house. I was like online or listening to podcasts and reading books, but I felt like I was by myself. And I felt like if I was surrounded by people who cared about the same things I did and were actively working on the same path, then think about how much our collaborative conversations could help each other grow. And so I started just putting it out to a couple friends and was like, hey, would you be interested in getting together once a month just to talk about real estate? Hey, we can go to a brewery. We can have a beer. That's why it's called Pints and Properties, because everyone grabs a beer and talks about it. And that first meetup, I had 4 people show up, and now, it compounds over time, the consistency. And that's where I've learned all the things that I've learned is just by talking to people who know a little bit about something else. And then I share my knowledge. And before you know it, we're all better because of it. And yeah, Pints and Properties I think we're up to like 21 different locations across the country now. So apparently there's a need. There's other people who want to talk about real estate too.
Yeah, no, this is really awesome. So I've talked to a couple of the investors that are part of our investor community, and we've had this conversation just over the last, I don't know, 5 to 10 days, where sometimes you feel like you're alone, but until you actually start to open up your mouth or even take more massive action like you did, you realize that, hey, listen, there are other people that like to talk about this. This is one of the reasons that we started an accredited investor club, because there are certain things that as an accredited investor, you want to be able to talk to other accredited investors and find out what they're thinking about, what they're going through, gain access to specific opportunities that could help you. And it goes back to some of the things we're doing now, which is really looking at that like active income and being able to use it more in passive income. But the fact that you also recognize that need and you started Pints and Properties, and not only did you start it where you were, it sounds like you've now expanded it so that other people are you're basically taking the model and being able to implement it in other places. Is that right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, that's cool. Now, is each Pints and Properties independent, or do you all connect with one another sometimes? Maybe talk to us a little bit about how that dynamic works.
Yeah, we have a hosts. We're big on Slack. So my community is also in the agent space, the 5 pillars team at eXp Realty. They're all investor-minded agents who were just like me, but who wanted to active income to passive. But anyway, one of the threads in our Slack channel, which is all the different channels in which we talk about a bunch of different investor things, is the Pints and Properties host. And so the hosts can collaborate together and share lessons learned for themselves as well. And each of them go out and independently run their own meetups and then just provide us with the location, the speaker, and photos afterwards. So we can update the website, Facebook, Instagram, and just share.
Okay. Well, that's really awesome. And so I know a lot of people want to understand what the 5 pillars are. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to talk about the things, at least there's a way that I understand them. There's education, there's network, creativity, action, and perseverance. So if that is in fact correct, and we've understood that, like where do these come from? Like kind of why are these the 5 pillars that you decided that, hey, listen, this is what we're going to base our future success on?
Yeah. And that's such a hard question too, because when you're starting out, you have all these ideas, but just like in investing, you don't really know where they're going to go and unfold until you start living it. But they really have stayed true this whole time. Like we're really big on educating not only ourselves, but our clients and understanding that your net worth is your net worth. Yep. I screwed that up.
You're good. You can say it again. You can say it again here. Go ahead.
Your net worth is your net worth.
Yes.
There it is.
There you go.
And then that creativity is what moves you forward in so many different ways. Like there's always a way to get things done if you're creative and you understand the tools that are out there and how to structure them in a way that creates the end state you're looking for. And then you're never going to go anywhere unless you're taking the action to actually jump take the plunge and jump in. And then the perseverance is so key, because generally you're right on the breaking edge of greatness. And most people are like, oh, it's too hard. But if you can just keep going through, you're gonna find the success you're looking for.
Love that. Absolutely love it. So fantastic. And I guess just maybe one more thing before we get into the going long final three, because yes, of course, we have to get to the going long final three, because that's what everyone sticks around for. They're like, hang on, we got to check out what Shelby's going to talk about. So I know that you're big on creating value. You've talked about a couple of different ways that you've done that, either through helping to educate others, to start your pints and properties, for example. But maybe talk to us about, I don't know, maybe another way that you also go out and create value, because I know that's such a massive thing for you.
Yeah, pints and properties. And I guess one of the most things that I think that I bring the most value to the world in, from my own perspective, is the fact that I'm very systems oriented naturally. And so whenever I go through a process, I create a checklist or a system or a flow in which others can operate off of. So I do feel like that's one of the strong points when I'm talking to an agent, an investor, or a host, and they're going through a struggle that I've previously lived. I'm like, oh, I can just share my checklist. And I have a Google Drive education library of tools that I'm constantly sharing with people. So I think that my takeaway for that would be, you have a strength. You know, it's not all going to be systems building, but whatever it is out there is someone else's weakness. And so just be aware of that, about how you could share with other people.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. When you can look to be able to compliment others, share where you shine, where someone else may not, it's a great way for collaboration. So I appreciate you sharing that with us again, and just giving us another example as to how you continue to go out and create value. Absolutely appreciated. And like I said before, Shelby, like, the thing is, we got to get to the going long final three. But the thing is, I never asked the going long final three. Well, you've already, okay, that was the question I was going to ask you. I was like, hey, are you ready? Because I don't ever ask anybody unless you're ready. But you're already like, Billy, just get to it. Just get to it. All right, I figured you would be. So here we go. So the very first of the going long final three is, we started with you over in Charlotte, North Carolina. And now I kind of want to bring it back over to where I live now, like my new adopted home side of the pond, which is over here in Europe. Sure. And I would love for you to share with the Going Long family, Shelby, what is your favorite European city that you've either visited or is still on your bucket list to visit?
So I would have to say Brussels, Belgium. I lived in Europe for 5 years as a child. My dad was military, and we lived in Shape, Belgium, for 2 years. And I just have really fond memories of living in Belgium and around Brussels. So.
Okay, Brussels. Okay, fantastic. So another vote for Brussels, and we're going to include that in the show notes as well. And so I appreciate that. And then the thing is, the second question has to do with a lot that I've seen. I've been very fortunate to meet a lot of extremely successful people. And I consider you to be someone who's extremely successful as well. You've mentioned the things that you've done, the lives that you've impacted, and the way that you continue to go out and create value. And, you know, one of the things that I've recognized, and hopefully you agree with me, Shelby, that when someone is really successful, that one of the main reasons that they're successful is usually when they put their mind to something, like the very first time that they try something, they get it right. And then they're able from there to continue to accelerate. I just said oh my God, I think I just messed that. No, I'm kidding. It was a joke. It was a joke. It was a joke. Don't worry. You're suffering for me. You were suffering for me. No, it was a joke. This is an inside joke. It's with me and the entire Going Long family. Nobody gets things right every time, especially successful people. Like, the reality is really successful people, Shelby, make a lot of mistakes or learning opportunities or whatever you want to call it. Actually, they probably make 20 to 50 times more than most people. Right. And the reality is, because they're out trying a lot more stuff. And so the thing is, well, because of that, and I'm sure that you've made probably lots and lots of mistakes, but yes. The thing that, and this is no joke, this is real, this is no joke. The reality is without a doubt, every single time a successful person has made a relevant mistake or learning opportunity or whatever you want to call it, every single time they stop, they learn from the mistake, and then they put different strategies, tactics, and actions in place to minimize the probability of that exact same thing happening to them. And so I would want you to, if you could help me in the Going Long family, it's really thinking not about the mistake or the learning opportunity, but what's the one lesson that you learned from that incident that you know the Going Long family needs to know today? What's that one lesson? you want to share with us?
So my one lesson would because like you said, I've made a lot of mistakes. And I would say that one of the biggest mistakes was when I let those mistakes that occurred seep into me and weigh me down and prevent future action and maybe some self-pity. Oh, how could this happen? So I would say that the biggest lesson learned is instead of being a sponge and absorbing and letting it weigh you down, just like be a rain jacket. I say this to my agents, be a rain jacket, not a sponge. Because if you know in your heart that you've done everything you can and you've taken away the lesson and you won't make that mistake again, don't let it weigh you down. Let it slide right off and keep moving because it's just wasted time. So be a rain jacket, not a sponge.
Fantastic. Be a rain jacket. Not hard to say. Hashtag rain jacket, not a sponge.
Yeah, there you go.
So very, very cool. Appreciate that. And then lastly, just to kind of bring things home, we love to fill our minds with knowledge here and would love for you to share with us, Shelby, what is one book that you would recommend to the Going Long family today?
I love Miracle Morning Millionaires, the Millionaires one by Hal Elrod and David Osborne. That book hit me at the right time. It really changed my entire life. So I read it recently and I still love it. So that's the one.
Miracle Morning Millionaires, fantastic. We will include that in the show notes as well. And wow, you know what? The thing that I've mentioned that I forgot to mention at the very beginning, I do want to thank you as well for all of your service. I forgot to say that in the very beginning, but thank you very much for your service.
Thanks for your support.
Always appreciate it. So, and with that kind of as a background, like I'm just thinking these conversations, they just literally fly by, Shelby. It's like they go super fast. I'm thinking about you telling us that you were active duty for 6 years. We picked up at that part of the story. 2017, you decide, well, you know what? You need to go full-time real estate. You really quickly learn like, hey, hang on a second. Even though my dad was telling me that this was cool, I'm having a really positive first experience. I've kind of emptied the coffers in this first one, or I can see that it's going to start happening because I've done this a couple of times. And so I need to get some active income to fill up the passive income bucket. You did that. You continue to go. 2018, you're out of the military. You're out doing your thing. You realize that you want to continue to, you found this strategy. You did the VA thing. Afterwards, you found this new strategy, the BRRRR strategy. You broke that down for us. You really helped us to understand what it is, how it can help everyone to get to the faster outcomes that they're looking for in their lives. You've also talked about your passion for going out and being able to create communities like Pints and Properties, which is not just where you are in North Carolina, but it's also in other places, like 21 different places. So it's continuing to add loads of value so that you can help others to move forward. You even talked to us about how you help people with standard operating procedures and processes and being able to share those because that's something that you also love to do. And aside from that, you're building a realty team that is a high performing team. I know we didn't get into all of that, but just with the very few things that you've shared with us today, which seem like a lot, I know that the entire Going Long family is thinking to themselves, oh my God, Billy, just ask the question. Like, how can we find out more about Shelby? How can we get in touch with her? How can we attend one of the Pints and Properties? Help us understand, Shelby. What's the best way for the Going Long family to contact you and be able to know more about what you're doing and how they can get involved?
For sure. So 5pillarsrealty.com contact is a good baseline for any inquiry. We also have pintsandproperties.com. And then please just come and hang out with me at Real Estate with Shelby on Instagram. That would be a great place. And agents out there, if you're looking for an investor-minded community, please hit me up. And if you're looking hosts for Pints and Properties, let me know and I'll send you the starter checklist for that.
Fantastic. And so we'll make that very, very easy because we're going to include the ways to contact Shelby that she just mentioned in the show notes. So don't stress out anybody. Don't worry if you missed it. Just check the show notes. It's all there. We'll make it really, really easy for you to contact Shelby, find out more about Pints and Properties, find out more about if you're an agent, you want to find out more about like investor minded and you want to connect with the community. She makes it really, really simple. So listen, Shelby, thank you so very much. I really appreciate you investing your time with me and the entire Going Long family and really, really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me. It was awesome. Loved it.
All right. Fantastic. Hey, Shelby, if you can give me like 15 seconds, I just want to say the last words to the Going Long family. Sure. So really quickly. So Going Long family, like, wasn't today's conversation awesome? Like Shelby started out with the positivity, brought the breakdown under helping you understand the BRRRR strategy and even gave you a way to contact her and find out more about what she's doing at her brokerage group and also with Pints and Properties. That's really, really cool. Check the show notes, everybody. So I know the thing is you're going to go out and you're going to take this content, this information, and you're going to put it into action. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, talk about what you've just learned so you can go from the theory, start to put it in practice. It's one of the things that Shelby was just talking about. And so while you're doing all of that, I'll be here waiting for you on the very next conversation. So go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much. Wow, don't you love hearing from top-notch experts in the field? You know, when I was getting started, I really wish that I would have had access to such experts. And even more, I wish they would have given me like a really simple list of things to follow so that I could have gotten to my goals much faster and been much happier even sooner. So that's why I've created for you the 7 things that you should avoid in order to be successful in long-distance investing. And you can pick that up really easily by going to billykeels.com/7 things to avoid. And also, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. I'm looking forward to seeing you on our very next episode, so go out and make it a great day.